Hello, my name is Matthew, and I read Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. This is my copy that I have, and I read it years ago and remember it quite fondly. I didn't remember just how strange of a book it is. One of the things I was thinking throughout the entire read is how unlikely of a classic this is. Um, the first two stories are absolutely some of the most famous episodes in Western literature. Gulliver, in the first voyage, he goes somewhere and he's gigantic, and everybody is tiny, and there's like a parallel version of English society, but they're all in miniature. And the second voyage, Gulliver goes off, and now he's tiny, and everybody else is gigantic. The other two, the third and fourth voyages are often not part of the children's books or as primarily focused in movie or TV adaptations. But there's a lot of strange things happening throughout the entire book. Gulliver is a terrible traveler. It reminded me of Robinson Crusoe, where every time he goes out into the ocean, he just crashes somewhere. If you ever see Gulliver boarding a plane or getting onto a boat, you should just get off as soon as you can. And of all of the strange, fantastical things and all of the allegories, looking at society from different perspectives when they're really tiny, look how ridiculous everything is, and when they're really big, look how grotesque everything is, and how horrible the human body is, and all those sorts of things. Gulliver's temperament is hard to understand. He has a wife and children. Seemingly his goal on each voyage is to gain money to bring home some wealth, and for each adventure, each place he shows up in, he's a giant, and he's pinned down by these little whatever they were, the Lilliputians. He seems to just go, well, I guess I'm living here now. Even though they had like taken him hostage, they give him a room, and he goes, well, I guess I'll get some clothes and we'll have drinks. And he gives a travelogue of how their society works, and he talks to the kings, and he seems quite contented where he is. There's these kind of funny, grotesque episodes that happen that make it a good romping read. The first voyage, the princess's palace is on fire, and he had been drinking the night before. All the little people have these little pails, and they can't get the fire out. And so Gulliver relieves himself on the princess's palace. So there's things like that. He also evacuates his bowels at another part. So we get these bodily functions. And then he's really tiny in the second voyage, and he's seeing all the pores and knots and all the horrible things that are all over their skin. He's living in a dollhouse or something. He's in like a bird cage that the gigantic daughter of somebody else has, and he's in the bird cage or whatever it was, and thinks, well, I guess maybe I'll just live here forever. That'll be fine. Each time he goes back home to his wife and family, he goes, oh, off I have to go again. There's another opportunity to make money for the family. The third voyage, he goes off, and it's understandable why the third voyage would be less well remembered. It reminded me a lot of Animal Farm, where the allegory was just sort of on the nose. These people live in the clouds, and so they're really scientific minded and rational and not pragmatic, and so they have their head in the clouds, the way that The horse is represented as the proletariat because it's a workhorse. The fourth voyage is probably the strangest and the most negative. It's incredibly. There's a dialogue between Gulliver and a horse, the Hunanin, whatever it's called, where the Hunanins are this like the master horse is asking Gulliver about English society, and Gulliver has nothing positive to say. Everything is violence and brutality, self-centeredness, short-sightedness. Every human endeavor through all of history up until his time in modern England is just folly after folly, stupidity, and horrible. It reads like this really kind of fun tirade or litany of anger and just spewing criticism of the time. And in this land where all the horses live, they have the Yahoos that are these barbarian savages that are deformed, human-looking people, but their nails are all grown out. And as they go back and forth, the horses, of course, live in a utopia. The horses are perfect. And so Gulliver will tell the horse, well, this is England, and it's the worst. It's the worst. And then the horse will go, well, that's how the Yahoos act. The Yahoos do the same thing. And you get this double-sided, kind of getting beaten up on both sides. And then he leaves there. The actual narrative parts of the book don't hold up. There's not much of a story. It's mostly, I guess, a satire. That's what everyone says. It's this like satirical. It's a story framed in a way to just have satire and criticism of English society for Jonathan Swift. It's nothing joyous about it. The traveling, you don't really get a sense of any new kind of place, even though everything is so strange. They're all like these parallels, as if Gulliver is just going back to the same place that he came from, but looking at it from a different perspective. The fourth voyage is definitely the most interesting. It's this kind of bizarro philosophical dialogue between Gulliver and the horse. And each time Gulliver comes back from the voyage, he's a little bit crazier. When he was really big and then everyone else is really tiny, he goes back to England and his proportions are all out of whack. And then he's really tiny and everyone else is really big. He goes back to England and his proportions are all out of whack in the opposite way. And at the very end of the book, he just spent all this time talking to horses that he's like this madman. And you start to think, well, how much of any of this is really narratively believable? It's much more believable that he has gone mad. He's just crazy talking to horses. Most likely talking to himself. But it wasn't as enjoyable as I remember it. There wasn't as much of a story as I remember. It's just sort of getting to a place, having a different view of looking at the world, and then fairly humorous, fairly witty observations or criticisms or philosophical ideas that these other crazy lands reflect back on the world that we live in. I really, it's such a strange, I have a hard time understanding how this book has lasted as long as it has. Not that it's bad at all, but it's just that there's like two or three great memorable episodes that I guess really um, captivate the imagination, look really good on screen, um, make really good children's stories, but as a whole, it's entirely different um, than anything that you might know about the book before you read it. If you've seen Ted Danson as Gulliver and think, or Jack Black as Gulliver, and you think it's going to be this sort of voyaging Alice in Wonderland, it's much more serious, much darker, much more pessimistic, misanthropic, than it comes off um, from looking at the cover or whatever you know about the book. I definitely enjoyed it. It's a thought-provoking book, but very quickly the fun little episodes that you know about is not, you recognize that's not the meat of it, of the story. The narrative, the plot points aren't the takeaway when you finish it. Um, so that's what I'll say. There's that's what I'll say. I'll just end there. So Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. Um, Strange, enjoyable book. So thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like, and take care.